Okay, so this is safety legislation part two, and I do want to mention with regard to an inspection that this can happen at any time. OSHA does not typically give you a call ahead of time and tell you that they are going to come. They will just show up. Whether this is an inspection because of a complaint or something like that, or if it's because of a fatality, you know they're going to be coming. You just don't know exactly when, but they do happen. Now, inspections, when we do look at that, these are kind of the priority to OSHA. The first one's going to be imminent danger. And in OSHA's words, it is imminent danger is a result of an inspection where there is reasonable certainty that hazards exist and expose employees to unnecessary risks. Now, this can be by a complaint or this can be by other type of means. It can be by a story on the news or in the newspaper, something like that. If they're driving by, someone else notifies them. But if they call it imminent danger, it's going to be something that's going to be very persistent. It's going to be imminent, and they're going to do this fairly quickly. The second one is going to be a fatality or catastrophe. Now, this is going to be reported to OSHA, hopefully by the employer within an 8-hour period, as we talked about previously. Also, too, they hear about this sometimes on the news, and so they know that, hey, we haven't seen anything come across on this because they get daily updates on these fatalities or any type of hospitalization, that type of thing. And so this is somewhere where they may come out and see you even though you haven't reported it to OSHA and should have when we look at it. The third is going to be complaints or referrals. And this is going to be a complaint by an employee. We filled out one of those in our intro to OSHA, and so we know what that looks like. And that could be the complaint, or it could be a representative or someone has said, hey, there's something bad going on in this. We need to look at this, maybe like another person driving by or something. The fourth is going to be a programmed inspection, and this can be based on number of deaths in a specific injury or injury and illness incident rates in this industry. And so it kind of has to do with that. Once again, those are going to be those national and regional emphasis programs on that. The last one is going to be, and this is not mentioned on here, is going to be a fifth inspection priority. Now, this is going to be a follow-up to any of this first through the fourth. And what happens is OSHA will give you a specific amount of time to respond to any type of citation that they give you. And once they give you that amount of time, they can come back and inspect it. And it's called a follow-up inspection. They follow up to see whether you did what you were going to do, you said you were going to do, and if you actually made those changes, they can go ahead and come back. And so that would be the fifth type of inspection that's not listed specifically on here. Now, the inspection process, essentially what happens when they show up, they will show you their credentials, and I would go ahead and ask for these. So if they do not show them to you, they're pretty good about that. They will go ahead and asked to be speak to whoever the person in charge is on this. And so if the HR department is in charge of this, they will ask to speak to them. If it's going to be a safety manager or something, they will speak to them. It doesn't make a difference if your safety manager is not there. You can tell them that, but you should, as a employer, have a backup to what happens if the safety manager is not there or the person in charge is not there, because they can come at any point in time. They will come within normal working hours, and so you would be able to see them during those normal working hours. And typically it's going to be, as I mentioned, without prior notice. They're just going to show up and be at your door. They will have an opening conference, and during that opening conference, they will tell you exactly what they are looking for. On that, why they have come to speak with you. They will tell you exactly what documents they want to see, that type of thing, if they want to see a specific area as well. And what will happen is that then they will say, okay, I need these documents. The majority of the time they will go through documents first and then go out and do an on-site inspection. I do want to mention that you want someone there at all times with the OSHA inspector. Don't leave them by themselves. Especially on the floor. If you're gathering documents or something like that, make sure that you put them into a conference room where they can have their privacy and then also not be interrupted by other employees and that type of thing. Do also make sure that you gather just the information that they request. If they are asking for information, for example, on forklift training, just give them the information on the forklift training. Don't give them like all your training information. It just kind of opens another bag of worms that you as an employer don't want to do. The other also thing is if they ask for your programs, make sure you bring them specifically the programs that they want. You can write up a checklist, or they may have a checklist that you can look off of and say, okay, I will go gather these information, but don't leave them waiting for long periods of time. Give them something to look at while you're gathering the information. As an employer. Also, too, they will assume that you know the law, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and so do make sure that you or someone else who is very knowledgeable is with them at all points in time. If they go out and do the inspection on the floor, do make sure that there is someone with them at all points in time for that. They can ask to speak to employees by themselves, and an employee can ask to speak to the OSHA inspector by themselves. I've never had that happen, but it does happen. And you do have to I would step aside within, without hearing distance, that type of thing. And then as soon as that is finished, then, ask them if there's anything that you need to do with regard to that. But they will, at the very end, have a closing conference with you. They will go through everything that needs to happen. And they will tell you specifically what your citations are going to be. Now, the citations, there's different types of citations. The first one is going to be a willful, and this is going to be with regard to someone actually knowing, the employer knowing that the violation was out there, and they just said, oh, the heck with it, we're just going to go ahead and do it. Now, the new penalties that went into effect on January 23rd, for the willful was $132,598, and this is for each willful violation. The second is going to be a serious or other than serious. A serious is when there could have been a large probability of death or physical harm, and that the employer knew or should have known of that hazard. And the mandatory penalty for the serious violations are $13,260. An other than serious violation, this doesn't have to do with the safety and health of employees, but this does have to do with the regulations that are out there. And when we look at that, this can be a lot of different things other than serious. When we think about record keeping or having a poster or something with regard to that, this would be the violation. And once again, this is $13,260. Now, a repeated violation, this is to be, when we start looking at it, is something that's happened previously. And one of the things that I have to mention with regard to this is if your company has several entities that are out there, oops, not sure why that went that way. If you have other entities that are out there, you do want to make sure that you know what's going on within that company, because it could cause a repeated violation. And once again, this is going to be that $13,260. Now, these violations have gone up quite a bit within the last few years. These are tied to the I don't want to say it's not a cost of living, but it will go up on a yearly basis with inflation, and so we will see these increase every year. So do make sure that you're kind of knowing what those final penalties are, and once again, these will change. Now, the other thing that we can do is, this is something for the employer. The employer has 15 working days from the receipt of the citation to submit any objections. And typically this citation is going to be told to you during that closing conference. In secondary, they're going to send a PDF file of a letter which will state all of those regulations after that report is written. You can go to an appeals factor with this, and there's been several times where employees have done this. I've done this myself, to kind of say, hey, yeah, we were doing this, but we want to make sure this is lessened. So when we look at these violations and these violation numbers here, they can go down. And just to kind of mention that just because a willful violation is $132,000, we may end up paying only a certain amount of money with regard to that. And so that does happen quite often when it goes through an appellate process. Now, once again, we do have those state programs that are out there. OSHA does fund 50% of that program, but the other 50% comes from the state. We are in Kansas, which is in Region 7, and we are not a state plan. But in order to go to the state plans, let me go to this real quick. And we can look at the state plans, not there. Sorry, this is kind of going to a different area. I apologize to that. I'm not sure why it was doing that. Okay, so here are the state plans. It goes to the link of those. And so if we wanted to go to New Jersey, we could go to the New Jersey plan. That way then we could find out, well, I guess we can on this. I'm not having very much luck with this, am I? But we can go to a state plan and we can see exactly what that is. Here's one that actually worked, okay? And so this would be a state plan. It would be different than the federal plan. As I'd mentioned previously, we do want to make sure that we follow whatever plan and entity we're actually in. As I mentioned earlier, NIOSH also has the, when we look at the, let me start over. As I mentioned earlier, NIOSH is the research leg of OSHA. They also have a OSHRC, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission. That goes under those 11C information, as well as any type of appellate decisions that are out there. This is the NIOSH website. It is under the CDC. And we can go under the research programs, go in to see any type of about NIOSH, that type of thing. Now, once again, they will have different exposure limits and everything underneath NIOSH, but we are only required by law to follow OSHA, and that is where OSHA gets that information. Now, just to kind of go over the OSHA website here, which is not coming up for some reason, not having very good luck here on the OSHA websites here today. Okay, it is under OSHA.gov. You can learn more about OSHA under this tab here. When we look at it, you also have the worker rights that you can go under, file your complaint, anything here. The employer, this is where we can see what our employer responsibilities are, that type of thing. And then here we can go up underneath the standards. Another area that is very good to know about is the training. To go under, the training, we can get a lot of information here, as well as under news and resources, under the publications. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at the information for that. So for the most part, that is all for the safety legislation. I do want to make sure that you understand those videos, and then also a couple of other links are in there for you under modules. And with that, I will bid you adieu. Thank you.